Hello again, everyone. Witch Doctor here, looking at the markets, and I'm looking at the week-over-week activity of the major currencies that we talk about. You can see here on the left side, you got the dollar index futures, followed by the majors that I like to look at, and of course, on a 4-hour chart here, 4 hours of the dollar index, and you got the yen, the Swiss franc, and the Canadian dollar all across the top, and then across the bottom here, you got the euro, the pound, the Australian dollar. And what we want to emphasize here is I'm looking at last week's trading activity versus this past week, so to give us a gauge as to what the market's been doing. So I identify last week's high and last week's low here in the dollar index, and you can see primarily that a good majority of the price action here was trading inside of last week's trading range. Notice that the market had a tough time moving outside of above last week's high, and we didn't even go anywhere near last week's low. This trend line right here essentially showing us the rising lows here. You can see how you got higher lows from last week to this week, and that's kind of interesting, because really what it's just telling me here is that there's a compression of price action, and the overall sentiment here is that the market had been going sideways. Even though the market had been going ups and down and up and then down, you can see that there was plenty of action that could have been taken, but overall the market essentially went sideways. The big players out there did not find the need to move the dollar down below the 82.06, even the 82.06 level, or above the 82.95 level. You can see that in a sense it used last week's high as resistance. So this is really important, and it tells me that there were no buyers above 83 even. There were no sellers below 82.30, and in a sense the dollar index was really in a tight range over the course of last week. You can see here 82.40 was, or should we say 82.30 was the lower end of the range. 82.90 of course was the upper part of the range, somewhere in this, but that 60 cents of a trading range tells us here that really nothing happened overall. Okay, so you didn't miss anything if you went out to the beach or something like that over the course, if you went on vacation, for instance. When you go take a look at the euro here, you can see the same idea. 122.40 was the low of last week, but this week we could say that 122.60 was the low, and the high was up here at 123.80. So really only about 120 pips or something of a range for the week. Now what's really interesting, when you're looking at the range for the euro, we usually cover 120 pips per day. So overall the market was sideways here in the euro. Notice that we were not able to go down below last week's low, essentially putting in a higher low here, and we were constrained right around 123.80. So I'll be interested to see what kind of price action comes in this week, and it looks like for right now, if the bulls cannot get price above 123.80, then this market is definitely going to go down below 122.50, etc. Moving on to the pound, you can see here the pound dollar tried to move above last week's high, and essentially really was not able to find the buyers here. We did have a little bit of a push, but the market just not able to get going with any conviction here, although staying I guess you would say trading near the upper range of last week's trading. You can see here, looking at last week's trading range compared to this past week's trading range, this past week actually trading up near the upper part of last week's range. So anyways, what's interesting here is that the Australian dollar, though, it did move down below the previous week's trading range here, taking out the previous week's low, moving down below the 105. Now the question here is if the Australian dollar is done. We were talking about that major selling area right around 106, and sure enough, it did come into play, and the market did respect it. So now the question here is whether or not the market had found the sellers, or if we just retracing back to a buy zone in the Australian dollar. We'll talk about that in the premium video. You can see the Japanese yen here was the mover. even though it only moved something like 150 points on the week. But you can see that essentially this 78.20 area did hold last week's low, and it was off to the races for the duration of the week. Very nice. And when you go take a look at the longer term charts, like we will here in a moment, the market essentially did hold that major support level in the Japanese yen. So now the question is whether or not we're going to be able to break clearly above the 80 even level, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The Swiss franc here, not able to move outside the previous week's trading range. Similar to the dollar index, you can see just a sideways consolidation, and because of that, really that's giving the rest of the markets a little bit of a hang up in terms of their ability to move. So it seems like, you know, the place to be was in the Canadian dollar here. You can see just a constant sell-off here, essentially moving convincingly below the big figure here last week, and then this week you got the continuation order flow where it was not able to get above 99.50, essentially pushing down into the low 90s. We call it the mid 98s, pushing as low as 98.60. But really the markets to have been watching this past week apparently was the Japanese yen, of course, the Canadian dollar, and the Australian dollar, because those are the only ones that practically trended for us. And in a sense, if you were sitting there trying to trade the euro, the pound, or the Swissy, you might have gotten chopped up. So hope that helps. That's all I got for this market wrap. This is a Wish Doctor signing off. While I got you here, I wanted to take a quick moment to say that if you really liked what you're looking at here in the free Forex market wrap video, I wanted to give you the opportunity to come take a look at the premium weekly Forex market wrap video that I do every week. And basically it's a little bit more in depth, or should I say a lot more in depth information about the markets that I cover. And you can see here that in this short video I go over the basics about what I've been looking at on the major currencies. In the more in-depth market wrap video, I take a look at a in-depth analysis on the 6 major currency pairs. You also get actionable trading scenarios. The important thing here is that we're offering a 3-day risk-free trial, so you don't have to pay a cent. It's about a 30 to 45 minute video that'll go through all the major currency pairs that I look at, and it shows you a lot more in-depth analysis and forecast, looking at the longer term picture and the big major trends that are affecting what you're looking at on the lower time frames that you're looking at on a day-to-day basis. So take a moment to go take a look at the premium market wrap video. You can see the link here provided, www.traderstouch.com/3day, and it also includes a free membership to the Traders Learning Network, where you can meet other traders that are like-minded individuals, and they're basically there to help everybody looking at the same markets as you. So good luck, hope it helps, and look forward to seeing you on the inside.